Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. This video is titled The Methane Big Lie. I've been explaining the nonsense in Potholer's videos where he talks about a runaway greenhouse effect which comes crashing into the ground. Let's watch that again.
In my video, The Ice Age, I said there was a trigger that set off a vicious circle of events, each tipping the Earth into a cooling or a warming phase. In scientific terms, the vicious circle is called positive feedback, and it's best explained by looking at some weights on a balanced plank. If the weights are equidistant from the pivot point, the plank is in balance. A slight offset will tilt the plank, but it won't upset the balance. But let's say one of the weights is round and is moved half an inch. This causes the plank to tilt slightly, but the tilt causes the weight to roll a bit, and the shift in position causes the plank to tilt a bit more, until soon there's a runaway event and the plank comes crashing to the ground.
I've been explaining in my videos why climate feedback can't cause a runaway effect, it can't cause acceleration, and there is no ground for the climate to crash into. Potholer's theory, or whoever he wants to blame it on, is complete nonsense. Now let's look in some more detail about his next claim about methane.
The problem is, anything that causes a tiny increase in temperature can trigger this vicious circle. And the premise of the climate change proponents is that our industrial output of carbon dioxide itself is now the trigger. They calculate that the dramatic rise we've seen in carbon dioxide levels over the last 100 years will increase temperatures just enough to trigger a positive feedback loop that will result in more greenhouse gases, causing more warming, causing the release of more greenhouse gases, and so on. This is already being seen. For example, in Siberia, melting ice is thawing out millions of square miles of marsh, producing tons of methane gas. Methane is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, but it's much less abundant in the atmosphere. Even so, the methane which goes into the atmosphere adds to global warming, creating more marshland, which releases more methane.
Once again, I can't blame Potholer for parroting the nonsense being stated by climate scientists. This is a table created with values published in reports by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It shows the numbers which Potholer was using, the global warming potential. And if we look down here at methane, in the 1995 IPCC report, they said that methane was 21 times as powerful as carbon dioxide. In the 2007 report, they said it was 25 times as potent as carbon dioxide. And in the 2014 report, they bumped the number up to 28 times as potent as carbon dioxide. So I made a graph of the IPCC estimates over time, starting in 1995 and going up to 2014. They keep bumping the numbers up to make them sound scarier, and by the year 2100, they should be up to about 60 times as potent as carbon dioxide. But their numbers are complete nonsense. I generated this graph using the Radiative Transfer Model, RRTM. That's the radiative transfer model used by NCAR in their climate and weather models. What it shows is the greenhouse effect of water, carbon dioxide, and methane in blue. The x-axis is a logarithmic scale which shows none of that greenhouse gas, 10% of current values, and 10 times current values. The y-axis shows downwelling long-wave radiation, which is essentially the greenhouse effect. As you can see in this graph, water vapor in red is by far the most potent greenhouse gas. If we go from no water vapor up to current levels, the amount of downwelling long-wave radiation nearly triples. You can tell how potent a greenhouse gas is by how steep its slope is. Carbon dioxide is in yellow. It has a little bit of a slope, but is nowhere near as potent as water vapor. And the methane line is blue. It's nearly flat, showing that methane has very little impact on the greenhouse effect in Earth's atmosphere. Water vapor is by far the most potent greenhouse gas in Earth's atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is also important, but nowhere near as important as water vapor, and methane has very little effect. Now let's look at the IPCC table again. Notice that they completely ignored water vapor, which is far and away the most important greenhouse gas. I guess they feel they can't demonize or tax water vapor. Now I'm going to show you this graph again, which Potholer seems to have a very difficult time understanding. The graph shows the spectral bands of different greenhouse gas species. You can tell the potency of a greenhouse gas by the area underneath its curve. You can see that water vapor has a lot of gray area underneath its curve, making it a very potent greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide is also a significant greenhouse gas. You can tell this by the gray area underneath the carbon dioxide curves. However, the carbon dioxide efficiency as a greenhouse gas is reduced because of an overlap with the water vapor curves, which mask them. And now let's look at methane. It just has little tiny curves with very little gray area, and they overlap with water vapor. That's why methane does just about nothing as a greenhouse gas on Earth. And that's why radiative transfer models show the methane line is nearly flat. We can go from no methane up to very large amounts of methane, 10 times as much as we have now, and have very little impact on the greenhouse effect. We also have very little methane in Earth's atmosphere. That's because we have a lot of oxygen in our atmosphere. The Earth spews out huge amounts of methane, but it oxidizes quickly in the presence of oxygen. Earth is the only planet which has a lot of oxygen in our atmosphere. This is Saturn's moon Titan, which contains huge amounts of methane. In fact, they have oceans of methane there. Earth would also contain a lot of methane in our atmosphere if we didn't have plants which created oxygen, which oxidizes the methane. The reason we use methane, natural gas, as a fuel is exactly because it does oxidize quickly. Methane and oxygen react to release energy and produce carbon dioxide and water, the two important greenhouse gases. So these numbers from the IPCC are complete nonsense, and they keep bumping them up and up, trying to make them scarier and scarier. Their own climate models show that methane has almost no impact on Earth's greenhouse effect. So why are they demonizing methane? Well, the answer is very simple. It gives them an excuse to demonize meat production. We see these sort of headlines all the time, like this one from Scientific American, how meat contributes to global warming. They want to ban your hamburgers. They want to ban your steaks. I eat very little meat myself, and I think there's lots of good reasons not to eat meat, but greenhouse gases and methane is not one of them. I think it's a terrible idea as a scientist to lie to people in order to achieve a political goal, no matter how good that goal may be. Let's look now at how climate models have actually performed. In 1988, NASA's James Hansen appeared before Congress. This was 1988, and he presented 3 different scenarios for future greenhouse gas emissions. Scenario C was draconian cut so that there was no greenhouse gases being produced by humans after the year 2000. Scenario B was moderate greenhouse gas emissions, and Scenario A, the scary one here, was business as usual. This is what Hansen expected to happen, temperatures skyrocketing. The x-axis is year, and the y-axis is the change in temperature. And the red line shows actual measured lower troposphere temperatures from satellites. As you can see, troposphere temperatures have actually tracked Hansen's zero emissions scenario C. This shows us 2 things. 1, the models have failed badly, and 2, greenhouse gases have had very little impact on Earth's temperature since the year 2000. Here's another graph from remote sensing systems showing temperatures versus climate models in the tropical troposphere. Yellow shows the range of forecasts by different climate models, and black shows the actual measured temperatures, which you can see are much lower than what climate models predicted. Climate models in greenhouse gas theory aren't doing too well in the real world, and in fact they're having record cold right now as I speak in the Midwest. Climate scientists tell us that the Arctic is the fastest warming place on Earth, particularly in winter, and the ice is melting. So where's this record cold air coming from? A warm melting Arctic obviously can't produce record cold air. With these incredibly cold temperatures, Lake Michigan is flash freezing right now. It's probably pretty clear to people in the Midwest that the concerns about carbon dioxide and methane overheating the atmosphere are overblown. Let's return to the topic of this video again, the methane big lie. The reason we have very little methane on our surface is because we have oxygen. And the oxygen is because we have life on Earth, which they don't have on other planets. Plants absorb greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, and water, and they emit oxygen. Life itself can't exist without carbon dioxide. Potholer calls carbon dioxide and methane carbon gases and makes them sound very evil. But in fact, without the carbon gases, life itself would not exist. Many Americans get fooled by Potholer's authoritarian way of speaking and his British accent. Don't get me wrong, I love England. I went to grammar school there, I've started businesses there, I have many friends there, and I go there every chance I can get. But arrogance can be a big part of the English culture. Brits, like Americans, like to speak very authoritatively about things they know nothing about. The English language was obviously invented in England, and they've had a long time to perfect their speaking skills. They're very good at sounding convincing. Potholder has done his homework and knows what some academic climate scientists are saying, but the problem is that people he's quoting are wrong. By demonizing carbon gases, climate alarmists are demonizing life itself. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science for a long time.